So Cleanthes has tried to make this argument from analogy, and it's famously called the watchmaker argument in wider philosophical circles. It basically says, well, look, if it takes an intelligent mind of some sort to make a machine like a watch, and the universe is like an incredibly huge, complicated machine, it must take an incredibly huge, complicated mind to design the universe. Now, Cleanthes is going to say, this seems good, this is reason to think that God is actually sort of the way that Christians typically think of him. Philo's going to say, no, it's really not, because we've got a lot of reason to think that the universe isn't really anything like an amazingly complicated watch or any other sort of machine. So we really can't trust this kind of analogy. Now at this point, Cleanthes is going to try to change the subject, and he's going to say, wait, what about Demia's crazy view? Demia doesn't even rely on evidence, and Demia is going to say that God is inscrutable, so sort of we can't know much of anything about God. God is sort of grand and mysterious and all these sorts of things. Demia is going to respond, well, we can't break God down into parts, because that isn't fair, that doesn't really capture what God is like. Because all at once, God is sort of all of these interesting, disagreeing elements. So God is loving and jealous at the same time. God is in the past and the present and the future all at the same time, etc., etc. How could we even begin to understand that, let alone know how we could break it down into parts? But Cleanthes is going to say, well, hang on, this doesn't sound like a Christian God, because this doesn't sound like God has a mind at all. This is sort of this crazy, non-standard, non-person-like God. This is more like atheism than like Christianity, Cleanthes says, and of course this is a pretty gross overstatement, but Philo will call him out on it. He'll say, not so fast. Why should we think in terms of minds here? Why should we think God needs to have a mind necessarily? Well, we know we're looking for what orders the universe, and we think that minds provide order to things. So it's tempting to think the universe must have a mind, right? If we think that, and this is a sort of old philosophical principle, that the mind or the soul is what sort of keeps orderly material things together. So if we want the universe to have order, right, in the way that we sort of want, why is it that my body behaves in a sort of orderly fashion? Well, we think it's because of, my mind sort of keeps it under control. Well, if we want the universe to be an ordered place, it seems like maybe the universe needs to have a mind. But wait, this isn't what Cleanthes wants to say. He thinks that he wants God to have a mind, right? But he doesn't want the universe to have a mind. It's weird to say that God is the mind of the universe or something weird like that. So it looks like we don't have any good reason, even on this argument, to think that God is sort of human-like and has a human-like mind, but rather something strange like God could be the universe's mind. That's a weird conclusion. Philo's going to raise more troubles with Cleanthes' anthropomorphism. Remember, anthropomorphism is trying to make other things more like a human, so Cleanthes is trying to make God seem more human. Well, it doesn't look like the universe is an infinite place, so why should we assume that God is infinite? Now, of course, modern physics might disagree. We might say that the universe actually is infinite. This one might not be so great. Second, he's going to say, well, it doesn't look like the universe is all that perfect, right? Lots of weird stuff happens, lots of bad stuff happens. Right? We could imagine sort of a more orderly, more tidy universe, not necessarily evil, right? Just sort of disorganized is the issue here. We'll talk about evil later on. And modern physics will agree here, right? The universe is full of entropy, right? This is one of the cardinal laws of physics. Is there's a lot of chaos going on. And so why should we assume that God is perfect if we have an imperfect universe? And for that matter, even if the universe were perfect, how can we be sure that God didn't just sort of accidentally make it perfect, right? We can stumble on making things that are way better in fact than we know how to do intentionally. And for that matter, why would we assume there's just one God, right? If we want to use this sort of builder analogy, we know that it takes more than one person to make most machines, and so why couldn't it take more than one God to make the universe? Why wouldn't we have a pantheon? Here's some more assumptions, some more troubles. If God is just like us, if God is like a human, anthropomorphized, well, shouldn't he grow old and die? Shouldn't he reproduce and have offspring? Shouldn't he have a body, right? Why, if God is like us, why does God not have a physical form? Demia is going to add, if we're not sure about all these things, how do we know how to treat God, right? How do we know God is worthy of worship or praise instead of mockery, maybe? We don't really know anything about this God, so it seems like Cleanthes' sense of anthropomorphism breaks traditional Christianity. We might think this is a significant downside to it, and we'll see how he can respond and what else happens in our next video.